and welcome back to Connect Euronet here in the European Parliament, broadcasting live on Facebook and on our website connect.euronet.eu. We've got a lovely audience here from the European Youth Forum and from EX journalism university students and young professionals from all over Europe, so you're very welcome. As you can see, we also have 4 different MEPs that have joined us up on the table here today. We have Manfred Weber from the EPP. Thanks for coming along. We've Hannah Swoboda from the Socialists. Hello. Rebecca Harms, the only lady on the panel, from the Greens, and Graham Watson from the Liberals, the presidents of the ALDE Group. So thank you very much for coming along. You're very brave. I'm sure there's lots of questions, tough questions coming at you in a few minutes via Facebook, through interactive Facebook, and of course from our audience. For the last half an hour we've been speaking about Erasmus, the Erasmus programme, and it's a great way to get young people and young students teach them more about the European Union stuff, because let's be honest, the EU is not going through such a great period at the moment. The topic that we're discussing here today is the role of the media in bridging that gap between the EU and citizens. But what about the EU? The EU is not doing itself many favours at the moment. Graham, would you like to start?
Well, yeah, it's true. We're not doing brilliantly because the European institutions have always felt it was up to the member states to make publicity for Europe. What we've discovered is that some of the member states are either not making publicity or sometimes even making bad publicity, blaming Europe for everything that goes wrong. But the media can do a huge job. Take the Erasmus programme. You know, the best thing ever to happen was that film, Auberge Espagnole, all about the Erasmus programme, showing people, you know, how it works. And the more we can do this, the more we can get young people moving across frontiers, engaging with each other, the more we will build Europe from the ground up, which will always be far stronger than trying to build a continent from government level downwards.
Absolutely. Erasmus is the ultimate success story of the European Union, but we haven't had so many successful stories recently. What's going wrong, Mr. Swoboda?
Well, first of all, of course, we should extend the Erasmus program, for example, also the young people from North Africa, from Arab countries, to involve them more. So that could be another success in involving our neighbors, because that's very important. What's going wrong, I think, is going wrong that after many successes and many strengthening of European institutions, the head of government noticed, we have less power, less influence, we have to take it back. And the economic crisis was the occasion to take things back or to concentrate on issues which were not yet really communitarian in the sense of job of the Commission and of the Parliament. And they try with the argument, we pay the money on the national level, so we have to have the right to take the decisions. I think this is very dangerous because it undermines all the successes we have. And it's not only, you know, psychological, it's not only that on these issues now we can find a certain kind of renationalization, but also on other issues. And people don't believe anymore in the possibility to come to close decision. Let's take the summit of yesterday. Now it is Britain and the Czech Republic who say no. On the major minimum element of a jobs program, especially a job for the young, the Swedish Prime Minister said, no, I cannot agree because I have to ask the Parliament. What kind of excuse? We are here, you know, we sanction violation of the budgetary deficit policy, but on the minimum advice giving to national government to do something about the young unemployed, Prime Minister says, well, I cannot really agree on that. And that is, I think, really doing damage to the European Union.
And really confusing European citizens. I mean, do you think European citizens understand all the jargon that's used here in Brussels, from the EFSF to the ESM, defaults, credit swaps, all this? Do you think that people understand what exactly is going on here in Brussels?
Surely no. I think, but on the other hand, did everybody understands that it's a concrete, detailed decision on national level? So I think we must be fair with Europe. We must be fair with Europe, and perhaps it's our job on European level to have a more broader picture on the general lines. And perhaps Erasmus is one of these examples where the people, and especially the young people, could see that we on European level between the groups are united. We want to invest more in this field, in getting cooperation and getting together. And for understanding what Europe in a communitarian method really means is, on the other hand, as well, that we explain that we have on political general issues for the European Union as a whole, we have really different perspectives between the groups. That the people see really differences between Greens and EPP, European People's Party, and the Socialist Liberals. That the people see that there are different approaches for the future of the European Union, and the people, the young people especially, they could decide in which direction we will work. That's communitarian methods. That's a democracy method for European Union.
And do you think they are?
So for me, yesterday, following the last of more than a dozen so-called crisis summits, I must say the darkest chapter yesterday was the debate on whether to include countries like Poland into the decision-making process in the crisis or not. And I found it a shame that only few years after the so-called reunification of East and West in Europe, we have a debate whether Poland shall sit on the table with the big old European countries or not. So this was a very dark point yesterday, and it shows clearly that the heads of states in some of the big old European countries have not understood that we either win in the crisis, all Europeans together, or we are going to lose. And maybe citizens, especially those who are close to the Erasmus program and other programs, understand this better. But if the heads of state are not communicating this, then I think it's up to the parliament to take the battle and to fight for this understanding of crisis solution.
I agree with that, and I hope that people, when they come to vote in elections in their countries, will look at whether their government is actually helping to make the European Union work or not. Too many of them at the moment are not. You know, you've got one head of state in particular trying to set up a kind of inner core in the European Union and exclude the others from decision making. It's not going to work like that.
National interests.
Exactly. Yeah. And, you know, you can't justify Europe the same way you used to. People would have said, well, Europe is all about peace, or Europe is all about prosperity through the single market. Europe is much more than that these days. It's about solidarity in a difficult and sometimes dangerous world.
I've never once seen solidarity in a European Council here in Brussels.
But it is, because on a daily basis we're looking at challenges of rapid world population growth and greater migration than we've seen before. We're looking at the challenge of climate change and the related challenge of energy security. We're looking at the challenge of fighting internationally organized crime, where some criminal gangs are now sometimes more powerful than some national governments. And that's why we need solidarity, to get on top of those challenges as 500 million people acting together.
Maybe we have a question here from our audience. Maybe they have some observations from their member states. Or not. Okay, we'll take a question from Facebook instead.
Yeah. Hi, I'm from EX. My question is, I heard in the first minutes of this debate that the member states should promote EU in the media, etc. But really, don't you think that the EU still gives an image and people don't really understand what happens? And so it's also difficult for the media to promote it when the image is still so... It's difficult to go behind and understand. I mean, we try, but...
I think that you're right, there's a vicious circle for the moment, which goes in the direction that, you know, you have a bad image and how to sell a product with a bad image, and therefore it gets a worse image. This is absolutely right, but nevertheless we have to break through this circle and the cycle. And therefore, I think there are possibilities to explain what is happening, also in the negative sense or in the positive sense. For example, yesterday they started to talk about growth, unemployment, youth unemployment, what can be done against. Much too weak, not very intensive. But still many media ask, what do you think about the treaty, the special treaty on budgetary discipline? it will not have an effect. It doesn't have an effect. Also now it doesn't have an effect. Budgetary discipline is necessary, but this treaty has no effect and is going in the wrong way because it's undermining our common position. So I would like also to ask the media, not criticizing them, but ask the media to go to the real problem of, for example, young people. Why is it possible to have countries with nearly 50% unemployment of young people? And EU must do something against it, together, of course, with the member states. So I think there are issues, there are real issues which are affecting people. Too often, politicians and media discuss, some superficial things what nobody understands. If I would listen to radio and would not be here member or active, I wouldn't understand most of the issues discussed. Therefore, I think it's a common task of media and politicians to change our terminology and speak about the real problem that people have, about jobs, about income gaps, and so on.
And there's one basic problem in the media coverage for European politics. This is, in most of the media, there's not enough space for the European issues. So, for example, coming from Germany, we have a federal system. And compared to the coverage of European issues, for example, all decisions, sometimes decisions which do not really matter on the level of the Bundesländer, have much bigger attention in German media than European issues. And so if we don't find the space, thanks to the internet, we discover our new possibilities. But if we do not find more space in the existing media, Europe will always be a little bit lost and fighting against not enough information among the citizens.
But I think it's very important that we are not on European level, are not talking about these technical things when we are talking about treaties and so on and structures and so on. So a lot of, especially young people, are not very much interested in technical things, how we politicians are behaving, how we politicians are interested in. We must talk about the issues. And when last week Commissioner Reding was proposing a directive about data protection on internet, when I'm in Facebook and Twitter and I'm online and I have all my data there, who is protecting my data? First of all, who has the power to make regulations for protecting data whose storage is in the United States, for example, or in Canada or where else around the world, and talk about the concrete issues where everybody who is listening now is interested in, because it belongs to my daily life. And so we on European level are responsible for these things. And then let's discuss it. What is necessary, what is needed there in such a regulation, and what perhaps is not needed in the regulation on concrete things. And then last point. In the European Parliament, we are deciding not on the question of whether I'm a German and French, an Italian colleague. We are deciding on behalf of groups, on political visions, on our thinking, on what is important for me. And then Italian colleagues from the EPP are in favor of automatic sanctions for stability, for example, and others from the communists are not in favor from Germany. So it's not national perspective, and that's important to show, and that's important for the election campaign, to show the people we are not here on a base of national thinking, we are on a base here on our own vision of Europe, and that's what we are fighting for.
Okay, this guy in a white shirt there that has a question. He is actually one of the prize winners, I believe. Yes. We've been celebrating the prize celebrations of the Euronet Awards today. You can tell him a bit more about that and then go with your next question.
So talk about the awards and the prize?
Just give them a little short synopsis.
There was Euronet Awards, competition for European journalists, young European journalists, and the topic was citizens' rights, and my topic was the rights of the people who are visually impaired. And I was chosen as the winner of the competition. But I have to ask you, thank you. I want to ask you a question because the moment seems perfect for the question I had prepared. In the context of today, when just recently this ACTA anti-counterfeiting trade agreement surfaced, and the information spread on the internet that recently even Romania, because I'm from Romania, signed the ACTA. There was a lot of confusion. People were just panicked and were talking about the fact that, wow, all of the countries signed, internet is doomed. And I think it's a lot of misunderstanding here. And to be honest, when I first saw articles about the anti-counterfeiting trade agreement, I didn't understand too much what that involved, what it supposed. And to be honest, I learned and understood more from comments and explainings that bloggers did on the internet. And this is where I want to ask you, how do you think it's possible that the media wasn't able, in a way, to explain in short terms or in a basic way what ACTA means, but some bloggers on the internet managed to do this? And do you think it also depends on, for example, the European institutions to better deliver what their laws and proposals mean and what they're signing, to better deliver this towards the media, who at the moment can better explain it to the citizens?
I think that's a really good question, and congratulations on having taken it up and on being one of the prize winners. But I mean, what this is all about is something that is not just European. It's not strictly European. It is global in its reach. And one of the problems we have is we have global challenges. We want to find global solutions to them, but we don't have any global forms of governance. The closest we get, the closest any of our countries gets to having a handle over what is happening supranationally is the European Union. And we will have a debate here about ACTA, and we will have a vote on it. As you know, one of the criticisms was that it's been negotiated in secret. Well, actually, most international treaties are negotiated in secret. Countries sign them, and then you have the debate before ratification. And we will have a lot. And I think there's probably been a lot of misinformation about ACTA, but there's also been a lot of concern expressed, which may be perfectly legitimate, and that will be part of the debate we will have here in Parliament in the coming weeks. Everybody wants the internet to develop. It's been a tremendously liberating factor in our societies, but everybody recognizes that it carries dangers as well as advantages. And government's role is to try to get the balance right. Government's role on counterfeiting is a very, very difficult one in these issues. And I think there's going to be a very legitimate debate we're going to have here. And I think you will see people's political approaches defined by the way they approach that debate and the way they vote on ACTA when it comes up for a vote here.
In addition, I think it is the right of the ones on the right of the others. It's not black and white. You know, you have, of course, rights to be contested and to be preserved on the one hand. So we will have this very serious discussion. But what your question is about the information of the media. I think you're right. Of course, we have many meetings with the media. Also, the media don't know exactly what will be on top of the discussion, for example, in the blogger scene. So they are sometimes also late, like we are. But I think what the most important thing is, and we expressed it already now, is how to explain the issues which are at stake. Because before we say we agree or we disagree, we have really to go to explain with the media in terms which could be understood, in terms which rights we have to defend. We have to defend the rights of the authors, but the defend of the users of the internet, for example. And then what is the best combination of defending both? And who should have the preference? And this issue, of course, we have to be discussed. We didn't come, also in my group, not yet, to the final position. But that's the last thing I want to say. In this Parliament, you can be sure that our debates are very sincere. inside the different political groups and the parliament. We don't rush into agreements. We have now the PNR, the passenger name and data transfer. We had SWIFT, the bank data transfer to the US. For months we discussed it because we want to find a solution which is really dealing with the heart of the issue and is defending the rights of the citizens. That is what I want to say. Unfortunately, I have to leave because we started too late. So I'll let to the colleagues.
Bit of a dig there. No problem. Well, thank you very much for coming, Hannah Swoboda from the Socialist Group. And we'll see you again here, hopefully.
Good luck for the further debate.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No problem.
I would like to come back to this question on the bloggers, why they understand better to communicate on the problems of ACTA. So obviously they are closer to the question of data protection and the web. So they do not buy all the arguments given by governments, the European Commission, the Council, etc. Also not the governments, the arguments given by the, for example, government of the United States. And I think with ACTA, as we had with SWIFT, we will face some tremendous challenge to find our positions on data protection, the values of data, and the new world of the internet. And so with SWIFT, I made a very negative experience in this parliament because in the very beginning, for me, it seemed as if the European Parliament would be ready to fight for the different understanding of citizens' rights, including data protection, for the different understanding in Europe compared to the United States understanding. In the end, the Parliament gave up. So nothing remained from the starting point of the battle, and we will see whether this experience we are going to repeat with ACTA or not.
Only one sentence on the main question, on the question of why are the journalists, the media, not so good informed like the bloggers? That was the main question, not about the content, about ACTA, about the structuring question. And there I must underline, sorry, we as politicians, we are not responsible for everything. We have a lot of power, but not for everything. I must say, for the job to explain the very difficult issues on our table. We have different issues, climate change, financial market, data protection, very difficult issues on the table. To explain these issues to the people, that's normally the job of journalists, to explain it, to translate it into daily life. Mm-hmm. What does it mean for the viewers, for the news information? And sorry, I must say that we have in Brussels, for example, one big German media, the Spiegel, the weekly newspaper in Germany. We have one journalist here from the Spiegel in Brussels. And sorry, in this pre-election in America, when Gingrich and Romney was elected in South Carolina, the election was, there were 3 journalists from Spiegel looking what is going on in South Carolina. And that's not understandable from my point of view, that there are not so much journalists, that the newspapers are not investing enough here on Brussels level to have really the full picture, that the journalists have really enough time to be informed about the process here and give really the people a good picture of what is going on here.
But for the summits, for the crisis meetings, they are showing up. So then they are coming with big teams from the national media, and they are always trying to understand the situation and what it is about.
To understand, because most journalists are left. You're left for from 12 to 14 hours, up to maybe 5 o'clock in the morning, in a big room with lots of journalists. Most journalists are using Twitter as their only source of information, or various sources they have in perm reps. Finally, then, by 3 o'clock in the morning, there's a flurry of action. All the press conferences take place at the very same time, and then you have to get your story out. This is a very, very complicated job.
Yes.
While heads of state are upstairs locked up in a room telling us absolutely nothing of the truth. Anyway, we have a question. I'm having a rant now. A question from the audience there.
So you said that Young wasn't interested in the European affairs. So I wanted to know, what are you going to do to make them interested?
and attract them to Brussels. You're complaining their Spiegel's not here, so
to invite a lot of people to coming and in being interested. Well, our daily job as member of parliament is to inform our citizens at home, to be present there, to talk, to discuss with students, with in schools and so on, to be present in daily life. In media, we do our best to inform the colleagues. But at the end, it's a question of, is there really enough interest from the media side? That's always our
I wonder, does anyone in the audience know that the European Parliament just opened a visitor centre? Was anyone aware of that? Apart from, so well, 2, 3. Yeah. And most of you are all based in Brussels. Now that's interesting.
Yes.
But I mean, there is a role here for politicians as well. I mean, I don't take the view that it's only journalists whose job is to communicate.
Not only.
It's the job of politicians. And our job, I think, much of the time, is not necessarily just to talk about what we're doing, but it's to explain to people why we're doing it. What is the stimulus that leads us to do something? Why are we passing legislation on health claims and food, for example? It's because we are concerned that some people are trying to sell snake oil to unsuspecting shoppers. And you've got to make sure that government stops people doing things that are damaging or that are misleading on the market. And there's so many things that go on at European level where people hear about what we're doing, but they don't always understand why.
Absolutely. We have another question there. You can just introduce yourself as well.
Hello, my name is Marko Gordosic. I am representing here ASIA Europe, European Students Forum. First of all, I wanted to come back a bit to youth questions, especially because most of us here are kind of youth representatives, and also to kind of go to the previous debate where we were discussing a bit the Erasmus for All. I wanted to ask you personally, how much do you see the role of the non-governmental organizations and the non-formal education in the developments on the topic of the youth employment, and how much NGOs can work on that, and how much they can contribute, especially to the skills and competences of young people when they enter the labor market. I'm especially going on that because of the question we are recently having regarding the Erasmus for All proposal. I don't know how much the Parliament is aware of the fact that the youth sector and the NGOs are not that happy with how it's proposed, and we wish, of course, to have a bigger focus there on us. So, yeah, this is my question. Thank you.
From my point of view, I think, generally speaking, the question that we have more or less pressure from outside, from lobby organizations in this sense, like representing youth inside of the European Union. I think that's very, very important. It's very important, and I think there is here in the European Parliament a culture to be very open and investing time for dialogue with different perspectives. And that's for us, for our daily work, I think a very important thing. On the other hand, you must see that for me personally speaking, it was not on my table because I'm not part of the cultural committee, for example, where we are talking about youth things. So we have always our experts in the EPP and the Greens group, and so they are dealing with these things. And so it's good to have it balanced between the colleagues, that everybody has his interest and works on different working fields. So that's the second step. On the one hand, very important, but on the second step, you must address it to those colleagues who are really working in this field, on these directives and on these perspectives.
I think you talked about the role of NGOs. I think NGOs have, and they're a very recent phenomenon, they have brought a lot to our society, and they have encouraged people to get involved in political issues, but with the danger that we have developed single-issue politics. Now, in politics, if you are to make decisions which are sustainable, then you need to have an ideology. You need to have a global understanding of the world. You could be a member of an NGO called Friends of the Earth in favor of cleaner water supplies. But then you could also be a member of a health NGO that wants to put fluoride in water because it protects children's teeth. Now, the two are mutually incompatible. And one of the difficulties with the development of NGOs is at the same time we've seen the breakdown of ideologies. I mean, we have a political party around, well, it was around the table. I don't think it knows what it stands for any longer. because I don't think that its basic thinkers have any answers to today's problems. But you've got to approach, and we've got to teach ideology and value systems, as well as encouraging the involvement of people in politics through NGOs.
So on NGOs, so I have my roots in a non-governmental organization, and I came from a non-governmental citizens organization fighting nuclear to the Greens. So my roots are very, very in the civil society. But so my experience is that if an NGO fights on one issue only, there is not a big future for such an NGO. So they have normally a very short life. Others, like Friends of the Earth, or also organizations for social justice, for example, with a broader approach, they have good reasons to work. And so I like that here in the European Parliament we have impact from lobbyists not only representing industry and economy in the European Parliament in the decision making, but also from NGOs from other parts of society representing really citizens' organizations. It's really helpful for the decision making process.
Okay, I think we're going to have to wrap it up there because we have another half an hour debate to get through, which will be taken over by my colleague there, Chris. So I'd like to thank the MEPs for coming here today, and I hope you found it just as interesting as we did. And for all of you watching online, sorry we didn't even have time to get around to your questions, but hopefully we will do at the next debate here on connect.euronet.eu. Thanks very much, everyone, for coming. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Bye.